Hi, my name is Kenya Marcano. I am the World Ocean Day Youth Advisory Council representative for Trinidad and Tobago. I'm here in Trinidad for the High Seas Alliance BBNJ workshop. Sitting with me is Dr. Ryan Mohammed from the National Trust for Trinidad and Tobago. I'm just going to be asking a few questions. The first question is, from your scientific perspective, how does marine biodiversity loss in ABNJ impact coastal ecosystems in the Caribbean?
So in the Caribbean is a biodiversity hotspot.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a lot of biodiversity that is not just bound to our coastal nearshore areas. They move around the entire Caribbean, everything from our cetaceans, our marine sea turtles, and we have legislation in Trinidad and Tobago to protect our marine sea turtles, but then we also have a lot of legislation in some ways that are lacking to protect some of this biodiversity.
Right.
At the same time, the Caribbean has been known to participate in some activities like whaling. Some of the Caribbean islands, they still do participate. But now we slowly realizing that within the Caribbean, and same with some of our marine turtles, what we do in one country affects the population in other countries.
Right.
For instance, the Northeast Tobago is a hotspot for breeding of hawksbill turtles, and we have seen that these hawksbills, the sea turtles, they migrate throughout the Caribbean. So you lose a beach, you lose the population for a greater proportion of the Caribbean. So in terms of international boundaries and areas beyond our boundaries, loss of biodiversity in one key area in a particular jurisdiction could have a detrimental and trickle-on effect to the wider area within the Caribbean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thank you for shedding light on that. Absolutely. The second question I have for you is, how can aquaculture innovation align with the sustainable goals of the BBNJ agreement?
So aquaculture has always been seen as the controlled production of any aquatic species, whether plant or animal.
Right.
It's the controlled production from reproduction to grow-out harvesting. Now, in the past, we have always seen our water systems on the planet as an extractive resource. We extract from the seas, we extract from our rivers and lakes. Aquaculture can be seen as a potential mechanism to alleviate that harvest pressure on our oceans, all right, which is a good thing. On the flip side, there's now the move towards marine aquaculture, especially when we start to think about the blue economies, the blue-green economies. The issue with marine aquaculture, if not managed well, it provides a lot of pollution to our coastal nearshore areas, and that in itself could have a new detrimental effect.
Right.
So I would say aquaculture might not be the bullet to save all. It is a mechanism, a tool that needs to be managed for both maximizing our marine resources in terms of as a habitat, as a resource for production and providing a food resource, but also we need to understand it might solve the issue of food security, but we don't want it to be to the detriment of biodiversity. We need to find that balance, and innovations in aquaculture can move towards it. So, for instance, most marine aquaculture facilities, they are cage systems. If we use platforms like Geographic Information System, GIS platforms, we could move our cages to work out where's the best suitable areas that won't negatively impact our benthic or biodiversity. It won't negatively impact on native fish populations, but also in times of when there's adverse weather conditions, we can move it. So this is where aquaculture has to go if it really wants to be an answer to food security, but it cannot be an answer to food security at the risk of biodiversity.
Right. So it's all about finding that sweet spot almost.
Which is the hardest. You know, the thing with conservation, and it's not management of organisms, management of people.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. The third question that I have for you is, what what are the key capacity building needs for local researchers to engage in high seas biodiversity protection?
So, capacity needs, one. And I speak here for the Trinidad and Tobago context. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have three major institutions that provide that service. We have the University of West Indies, all right? We have the University of Trinidad and Tobago that has a marine MSc program. We have the Institute of Marine Affairs.
Yeah.
Now, the Institute of Marine Affairs, they do a lot to, in terms of monitoring, policy development, advocacy at international platforms. That's their main niche, all right? And to my understanding, I think they do a good job of it, all right? But they work within the remit of a mandate, okay? At UTT, again, to my understanding, they have a marine sciences department, and they provide, in some capacity, tertiary education, all right? The University of the West Indies has, in the past, had research done on marine biodiversity, works by Professor John Agard. Professor John Agard was instrumental in climate change work. He's one of the Nobel Prize winners with regards to climate change. He is a representative of the IPCC for climate change, all right? And he did a lot of foundational work on biodiversity, and he has had a lot of postgraduates that are now in these various institutions, and not just in Trinidad. So I think it is not just an issue of these institutions not having the capacity to build further capacity. We need to utilize what we have. Also, we have graduates coming out. The hardest thing for a graduate is to find a job.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And now and this is where we need to really advocate with our various ministries, ministries of planning, ministry of agriculture, food production, and fisheries, how to utilize the capacity that is being built into policy development and policy implementation, all right?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have the knowledge, but and we might have some people who have the attitude, but if we don't have the practice to actually implement, education in Trinidad and Tobago is mostly free. We've wasted our resources of free education if all our graduates just leave Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
Okay, so the capacity is there, and the potential to build more capacity is there.
Absolutely. Right. I heard something earlier today that said policy is nothing without education, and education is nothing without policy. And I think that hits the spot right there. Yeah. Absolutely. So my last and final question for you is, how important is it to integrate traditional knowledge and science in shaping marine policy?
Okay, so, and it's not just traditional, it's traditional and indigenous knowledge, all right? And this is something at IPBES, the International Panel for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, are really incorporating. I am a member of that task force, that international task force on capacity building for IPBES. And this is something, traditional knowledge, we are trying to incorporate in our capacity building platforms, all right? And I could give some examples where traditional knowledge goes, it's a double-sided sword. If you speak to fishermen, they know when to fish. They know when to go out. They look at the moon, the lunar cycles. They could tell you when they're putting out the nets, when they're throwing the lines, and all these things. They know that. And this is based on their knowledge that has been handed down generation to generation. As science has progressed, we realize certain fish species, they rely on that lunar cycle, and that influences their behavior of feeding, behavior, reproduction, etc.
Right.
So the traditional knowledge is there of when the fish aggregate.
Yeah.
Now, this is where it gets tricky. Do we utilize this information as traditional knowledge when to fish or when not to fish? Because what we fish now is aggregating breeding population, which is detrimental to the future of the species. Yeah. But it's still traditional knowledge. All right. So like I said, it's a two-sided sword. So we need to understand this information of traditional knowledge, all right, and how we utilize this information for not just for the betterment of understanding and transmitting information to one generation, but for the betterment of the species and of the ecosystem.
Right.
All right. Several times we speak out against harvesting of turtles. All right.
Yeah.
But when you speak to people that are poaching turtles, they say, and you speak on these different platforms, they say, you hear from the general public, oh, but it's our culture to eat turtles. My grandfather did this. And I say, we do not need to use culture as an excuse for a bad habit.
I agree, yeah.
All right? That should not be. All right? Because this is a controversial statement. 200-300 years ago, it was culture to have a slave.
True.
That has changed.
Yeah.
We have to come out of this mindset of all our bad practices and calling it culture. All right? As a member of the National Trust, we promote heritage, all right? And both tangible and natural heritage, built and natural heritage. And culture is it's interwoven into this. We have seen in the last 20 years a bucket list thing to do in Trinidad is eat bacon shark. Yet we know of several international publications that showed how important shark species are to ecosystem services and stabilization of ecosystems. But yet we still promote the consumption of shark as a tourist event, as a tourist thing. All right? And we have to really, really reel in that statement of culture, because we cannot use culture as an excuse for a bad habit. Right?
I love that quote right there. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Everything that you've said is very inspirational, and I think that a lot of us watching this can walk away with a lot of great information to take forward with us. Thank you so much for joining me.
It was pleased to be here.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.